please join me in giving a warm welcome to Pulsar expert David Kjerrumgaard, who's going to start with a brief introduction about himself, and then he'll jump straight into the agenda for what we'll be covering for today's webinar. So with that said, David, please go ahead.
Thank you, Karen, for that introduction. Welcome everyone to the StreamNative Cloud Workshop webinar. This webinar is going to cover how StreamNative Cloud is being used to build real-time applications and transform streams for analytics and business insights. Hopefully I'm going to start by providing some use cases and get into a demonstration of the StreamNative Cloud platform itself. So a little bit about me. As Karen mentioned, my name is David Kjerrumgaard. I'm a developer advocate here at StreamNative. I'm also an Apache Pulsar committer, author of the book by Manning Press, Pulsar in Action, formerly principal software engineer at Splunk, working on Splunk's internal Pulsar as a service platform, powering very, very large enterprises who use Apache Pulsar as the backbone of their messaging systems and solutions. And prior to that, I was a director of solutions architecture at StreamNative that got acquired by Splunk, which is why I ended up at Splunk. And also all these other companies listed there, FedEx, Lockheed Martin, Hortonworks, et cetera. I've been in a few places, a lot of experience. So pleasure to meet you all. As Karen mentioned, we'll talk a little bit about the agenda today. So we will start with use cases and some of the enterprise solutions built for real-time data pipelines and message and queuing based on StreamNative Cloud. We'll get into some actual customer use cases and talk about how they've leveraged the platform. Then we'll begin with a StreamNative Cloud demonstration itself. I'll walk you through the steps of how to get started. For those of you attending live today, you'll receive $200 in StreamNative Cloud credits. I'll walk you through how to utilize those, and then once you have that credit in place, how you can set up a Pulsar cluster, how you can get started connecting applications to that Pulsar cluster, show you how you can do some monitoring and application monitoring and looking at the metrics around data flowing through the system. Show you preview the real-time streaming data query using Flink SQL, which is in beta preview right now, and then also look at a little bit about the Kafka-on-Pulsar integration as well. And then lastly, I'll wrap it up with some new and upcoming features, things that are on our roadmap for the cloud coming up at the end, Q4 of this year and upcoming, first quarter of 2022 as well. So let's go ahead and get started with StreamNative different cloud use cases. So how are companies using StreamNative today? So we're really, again, we have two different offerings in the cloud space. One is the StreamNative Platform, which is, a bring your own sort of hardware solution. It's our software running on top of your infrastructure. But today we'll also be focusing on the StreamNative Cloud there on the right-hand side, which is a managed version of that. So it's completely hosted on StreamNative Cloud infrastructure, and it's our software, and we do first-line support and remediation of all the issues on that platform. But in either case, it supports application development across these three, different real-time, categories of applications. So the first one being there on the left, the application messaging. This is where customers use the Pulsar client libraries inside their business applications to provide messaging capabilities for things like event-driven microservices, notification services, payment processing, things of that nature. So that's one sort of category of applications that you can use StreamNative Cloud for. Another one is the data pipelines there in the center, in which customers use the StreamNative Cloud to perform the traditional ETL, the extract, transform, and load processing on raw data as it comes in from external systems. Pulsar supports a lot of different connector frameworks. So you can ingest data in real time from a lot of different sources. And then you can process that data and store it into longer term queryable systems like databases, data warehouses, things like that. So that later on you can, do analytics on that data, and it's a good data pipeline, get data in solution. And then the third sort of category is, real-time contextual analytics. And this is where customers use, the StreamNative Cloud backed by Apache Pulsar to perform real-time analytics on streaming data even before it's stored in a database, right? So you're looking at, allows them to react to conditions quickly while the business value of the data is still very high. So you're processing the data, very quickly. Things like dashboarding and IoT use cases, doing risk control, fraud detection, auditing, cybersecurity sort of use cases where you need to get the data, process the data while it's still in the stream. And so those are the various categories of use cases that broadly that StreamNative and Apache Pulsar support. So one of the industries and one of the first use cases, big customers of ours is called Iterable. They focus on targeted marketing. So they're a cross-channel marketing platform that automatically determines the correct time to engage with your customers. And so they partner with other vendors and handle the management of their promotional campaigns, their cross-channel marketing campaigns, using email, SMS, in-app, and in those types of channels. They typically use work queue approach to execute customer specified marketing workflows. So people want to send out messages at different time, and other types of scheduling and job processing. So they're able to they were able to move over to StreamNative Cloud to handle these complex workflows and billions of messages daily. They originally had a RabbitMQ sort of based infrastructure, Kafka and Amazon SQS as well, to sort of try and implement this sort of framework, but they found it just wouldn't scale and meet, the reliability and the features, that their use case required. And so there's a quote there around, after they evaluated several different messaging systems, they decided that Pulsar provide the right balance of scalability, reliability, and features to replace their existing RabbitMQ, and then ultimately scaling out to replace other messaging systems like Kafka and Amazon SQS as well. So they were a big user of ours, and they moved over to the StreamNative Cloud solution for that to power their entire targeted cross-channel marketing platform. The next one was a digital transformation undertaking in a very large, international package delivery company that delivers nearly 500,000 parcels per day for customers, including Amazon, Etsy, and eBay. So if chances are, if you go out and order something from Amazon or one of these sites coming up for Cyber Monday here, this company may be one of those vendors that is responsible for getting that package from the warehouse to your doorstep in time. And they were looking to move, from basically an application modernization effort, right? They wanted to move to an event-driven microservices-based application layer that was cloud-based, and they required a system that could meet a wide range of use cases, and Pulsar was a good fit for that. They needed a messaging system that supported long-term retention of messaging for auditing and analytical purposes, and StreamNative Cloud allowed that team to rapidly deploy multiple Pulsar clusters quickly across different regions. They had geo-replication set up in place. Again, since they're an international, they have hubs around the world, and they wanted to be able to share that data across all these different geographical locations quickly in real time. And they found that StreamNative Cloud was something that allowed them to ramp up very quickly and enable those use cases. Another interesting use case was a medical device company. They're one of the fastest growing companies in the medical devices sector. This company manufactures, markets, and sells smart medical devices entirely online. And so, the process of manufacturing, selling anything entirely online is no small task. And they wanted to, use Pulsar to provide what they call a data as a service platform. So all these different smart devices, transmit events, and they track and monitor these sort of things to make sure the customer has a good gets value out of this medical device that they're able to share online, and then provide those services to other, provide that data as a service to other components of their team, and so they can do some evaluation and some quality assurance and just a product refinement on the performance of their manufactured medical device, and make sure that it's performing up to speed and just continuously improve it. So they wanted to use Apache Pulsar and StreamNative Cloud to serve as a backbone for that. They're able to focus on integrating applications and supporting developers, and not having to worry about managing clusters and infrastructure and all the DevOps overhead that's associated with that. Instead, they can make sure they reliably consume this information from all their different customers and make it available to their data science team so they can do analytics on it as well. Another field or industry was a finance company, leading proprietary trading firm that specializes in equity index and commodity derivatives. Developed a high performance, low latency framework based on the StreamNative Cloud for processing this financial information from a variety of sources, in near real time. Obviously, trading They need the speed, they need the data quickly, they need it, at speed, they need to be correct, they can't lose the data. And so they chose StreamNative Cloud to allow them to, ingest their market data quickly, and not have to worry about the operational need to keep up with that, keep it up at scale to ensure the latency requirements were met. And so they could focus on, further innovation around, the theoretical market models rather than worry about, relying on keeping the data pipelines running up, and making sure they have real life, accurate data available to them. They can instead focus on where their value add is, which is with the theoretical market models, and in order to have a trading advantage, obviously. And then last but not least, there was the application performance monitoring. That's what APM stands for. Is a very competitive space. This provider works differently with an open source agent and supports monitoring a large amount of nodes for free. Their infrastructure was focused on Pulsar, but they wanted to focus their team on the needs of their applications and not managing the infrastructure as well. And so obviously APM requires the ingestion of large amounts of events and data, and doing some complex processing and correlation between the different logs, the different metrics on these different servers to sort of get a global view of how any application is running. You're doing application performance monitoring of a remote system for a third-party customer. They need to see how all the different, get a holistic view of how that application is interacting from an infrastructure perspective, from metrics within the application itself. And they wanted Apache Pulsar to be the backbone of that system, of gathering that data, and able to do real-time processing on that, merging of the streams together. And this, they chose StreamNative Cloud because it allowed them to, have better uptime and reliability of this critical piece of infrastructure. They didn't want to manage it themselves. Instead, they wanted to have StreamNative Cloud, provide a stable, reliable piece of infrastructure for them to build their APM platform on top of. So having said all that, giving you some background on how people, our customers are currently using, StreamNative Cloud in a diverse set of industries in order to provide value for their customers, let's get into the StreamNative Cloud demo itself. So in the first phase here, is about getting started. In this section, we'll cover how to create an account, how to create some clusters of tenants and namespaces, topics, and define a few policies, security, storage, and schema around this particular infrastructure. So typically these steps will be done once when you sign up for StreamNative Cloud, when you create an account. For those of you attending the webinar live or have signed up for it, you'll receive a $200 cloud credit for this. So you'll be able to walk through these steps using your cloud credits to get up and started. So let's go ahead and begin. Step one is obviously you'll navigate to streamnative.io and go to the create an account page. And from there, you'll be prompted with a form that looks something like this. You need to fill out this information, first name, last name, company, email is critical. Set yourself up a password so that you can log in again once you've created an account. It's also possible to log in with a Google account as well if you have one of those. This gets you into the system and creates you an actual account in the StreamNative Cloud platform. Now, once you've created that account, you'll be able to sign in. The next step is to create what's called an organization. Now, here, the screen shows you that I've used for my screenshot shows I'm already part of two different organizations as well. So I'm in a StreamNative development organization and then the developer advocate organization. But there's an option to create a new organization. So obviously, when you first sign in, you won't have any of these options. They won't show up as organizations that already existed. So you have to go with the create organization button that'll be available. And you say, I want to create a new organization for that. Now, it must be a unique name because these are globally across all of StreamNative Cloud. And so you have to first make sure that you pick a very unique name for your organization. And once you've done the create the organization, you want to quickly navigate over to the billing and payment thing to be able to use your these cloud credits that we're offering to you today. So there'll be a drop down in your StreamNative account. There's mine, using my work email. I'll go to the billing and payment drop down menu. And then from there, that'll bring you to this page here shown on the left. And there's an option there to enter your promotional code. So from there, you'll click on that button. It'll be a pop-up. It'll ask you to enter your code. Once you enter it, it'll apply that automatically, those $200 credit to your account. And then you can start beginning to create a paid account rather than a free account, which we'll show here in the next page. So from there, you'll go to create an instance, right? And so once you've created an organization, you have to create what's called an instance, and every organization can contain one or more Pulsar instances. An instance logically is a group of Pulsar clusters. Currently, StreamNative Cloud only supports a single cluster per instance, but we're working on that to provide that. So after you've created your organization, you must create a Pulsar instance. So here you specify a name, and then you choose which cloud provider you want to host your instance. Currently, Google Cloud or AWS are the two options. And then you specify the cluster type. Now, since you've added cloud credits, you should be able to select standard. And that will create a more robust, a higher throughput sort of cluster, but you can also choose free if you like. Free only supports a single availability zone, where if you do standard, you're able to support multiple availability zones. And once you're happy with your selections, you go ahead and hit continue, and it'll start spinning and eventually create a Pulsar instance. And you'll see a page like this. It'll spin up very quickly, and you'll see it return here, create a list of the image, right, called my instances, which is what we specified in the previous input window. So once it's ready, and it'll say it's ready, then the next step is to create a cluster. So you have to create that button there in the lower left that says create cluster, and that will take you to another dialog that will collect information on the actual Pulsar cluster itself. Now, once you click on that button, you'll be taken to a screen that looks something like this. And again, I've chosen the standard option, which gives me more choices than if you were to use the free. And the first one here being, obviously, you specify cluster name. I picked the very, unique my cluster. You can specify a different region that's available based on your cloud provider. There's different regions available. You can select your preferred region based on that. If there's none that you like, you can also request a region be created as well. For that, if there's something you don't like, you can obviously make that request, and we can accommodate you shortly. Then next, you must choose an instance type for both your bookies and your brokers, and then here you have very different options. And then once you select an option here, I've chosen tiny. I want a very, very small instance. Since this is just for a demo, it'll automatically in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that your base cost will adjust based on your choices. So currently, this is going to cost me 4 cents per hour. And in the bottom, you can see that it gives me a rough estimate of what the throughput of, the write throughput and the read throughput would be on that particular cluster based on that. So you can adjust it, make your selections accordingly. And then when you're done, when you have the right cost that you want, you have the right throughput that you want, you can go ahead and hit create, and you'll be taken to a screen that looks something like this. And it's, as it notes, it'll spin up your clusters being provisioned during this time. Not only, the cloud infrastructure is being provisioned and spun up, the Kubernetes layers being laid down for you guys, and then we're deploying the Apache Pulsar software on top of that, including, our custom proprietary version, or not, let's say not proprietary, but our supported version, along with some Kubernetes operators, is deployed on top of that. And this will spin for about 5 to 10 minutes, and it'll give you an update of the status, right? You see those little wheels would be spinning, and will indicate when your broker nodes are finally deployed, your proxy is deployed, then everything is up and running. It'll spin. So this is something you do once. You walk through the process of creating an organization, an instance, and you finally provision a cluster based on the different throughput requirements that you have. And when it finally finishes, you'll be given a screen, something like this, that shows you your cluster details, right? So you can review all your choices and make sure everything's correct. Again, it's the cluster name, my cluster. In this case, I chose Google Cloud as a provider, the US East 4 region, single AZ, and it's a standard cluster type versus the free. Just to note that these will also at this time share with you your administration URL to the cluster if you need to do any sort of REST API calls to sort of create tenants or create clusters, things like that. That URL will automatically, you can use that one there. And then the other one shown is the data URL for your cluster, which is what you would use inside your clients to actually connect and send data, produce data, consume data as well. So that information is there. It's also available through the UI. Go check this at any time, but you want to make sure that these things all line up. And you can see the naming structure sort of matches. So it has the cluster name, it has the organizational name there next is, and then the StreamNative Cloud IO prefix as well. So that will be your naming convention for your cluster. And that should be completely done at this point. As far as provisioning the cluster. Now, once you've provisioned the cluster, you need to navigate over to create a service account for this, because now you have a cluster up and running, but you don't have any administrative account assigned to this, so nobody can really do anything with this cluster yet. So we're not quite done. Once you've gone through this process, you need to click on service accounts, and you need to add create a service account that matches your particular name. And so in this case, my login credentials will be David, and it'll automatically populate David at StreamNative Cloud, SM Dev Advocates as the credential name. And that'll also, as you can see here, you have an option to make it a super administrator or not. In this case, I chose yes, just so I have full control over this cluster, and that creates this account for me. So that'll spin for a minute, and it will return something that looks like this. So again, you have the name, you have the role name, which is the actual name that we're going to use when we configure the policies about who has access to read and write. And then there's a key file, which is downloadable, which we'll show in a minute, but you can download a JSON file, which has your OAuth credentials in it. And then you can use that inside your applications to sort of connect to the cluster. And that's on the OAuth tab. There's also a token tab as well, which is not, I guess I took that slide out, which if you click on it as well, it has a similar download for the JWT token. If you want to use JSON Web tokens for authentication rather than OAuth, that's also an option as well. So again, these are the steps you do once to get the cluster up and running. Now let's switch over to a quick hands-on exercise where I'm going to walk you through the process of creating a tenant, a namespace, a topic, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to pause here and jump out of the slide deck and switch over real quickly to web interface. So I apologize, 1 minute here. Where's my cluster? Hopefully you guys can see this. Are you able to see?
We can, David. Thank you.
Great. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Okay. So this is exactly where we are once we've done walk through those steps. We have a copy of the My Instance cluster. And so we can see that by default, there's a couple of namespaces included. The Pulsar and the StreamNative ones are sort of administrative ones and not really for use. There's a public default one, which just comes with Pulsar, but let's go ahead and create a new one. So let's just go ahead and create a new tenant. We would click here, and I'm just going to call it webinar. Allowed clusters is for if you have multiple clusters and you want to have geo-replication or share the data between them. You can, this is the clusters that this tenant will be shared across. In this case, we just have one cluster, so we won't mind too much. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the service account as the administrator for this. And we go ahead and hit confirm. So great. So it's just created a tenant for us. Let's go into this tenant as well. We have the admin role already signed as well. That was done preactively. If you wanted to add another one, you would go here, and I could add another one here as well. You can add as many different administrative users as you want. You can have people join your organization. They will join in via email request. And then once they get assigned in, they're able to be added to all these different roles. And it's, again, tied to the email address that you first signed up with. It's associated with your account. So now that we have this tenant in place, let's go ahead and create a namespace. So we don't have a namespace yet. So those of you not familiar with Pulsar, it has the concept of tenants, which are organizational units, line of business units, and can be shared. So it allows you to share the same cluster across multiple different lines of business within an organization. And then under that is a concept called namespaces, which is just a logical grouping of topics, and then you can apply policies on. So let's just call this just a trial run here for the namespace, and that creates a namespace as well. So now we have that. Let's go ahead and configure this as well and give myself some additional permissions as well. So we already have this, the permissions are there, namespaces are here. That's great. And then one last thing, we'll go ahead and do a topic, and we'll create a new topic. And we'll just call that one, let's call it test, for lack of a better term. You have two choices, either persistent topic, which means the data is stored on disk and is kept until everybody acknowledges it. There's also the concept of non-persistent, which the data just resides in memory, and it's the best delivery effort, and there's a possibility of data loss in the event that the brokers goes down as well. So this is great. So we go ahead and hit confirm. Obviously, you can also choose a number of partitions. I chose 0. Which means it'll just be one big, large logical topic, but you can change that as well. So let's go ahead and look at the, policies. So now the last thing is I have to be able to read and write to this topic. So I've created a namespace, created a tenant, I've created an admin who can do different things like create namespaces under the tenant, and under the namespace, I create topics. But now lastly, I want to make myself available to do consume messages, produce messages, and execute Pulsar functions all on top of this tenants, or on top of this topic rather. So now that these policies are in place, we're finally ready to go. Just a sort of overview here, obviously on this page, there's things that we can see around with schema. Later on, we'll start publishing. We can see the messages that are there, some storage. We'll see the total storage size once we start writing some data that's there, number of entries and segments and BookKeeper segments and things of that nature, all visible from this screen, and everybody has it as well. There's no active subscriptions at the moment we can see, and no active producers. So it's kind of just a brand new topic on this, right? So let's go back now to what we would do here, right? So in this case, now tenant namespace and topic are all created. Now I'll start writing some data. So what you would do is you go to this download file, and hopefully you can see it creates this JSON file on my desktop. And now let's switch over to an IDE. This is the sort of preview. You can see this is actually a web-based IDE, and we're using this as part of our developer training, which you can sign up for at the end. We're talking about this. So this is an active workshop running on the web that you can use this sort of thing. But you can take this file and directly, as you can see, I've already dragged it in as a preliminary, and drop it right directly into this workspace, right? So you can sort of drop it into that space, and it has the contents there, these different, client types and the secret ID and everything's there, right? So we have this, you can just drop it right in. So the first thing we need to do is let's go ahead and write some messages, right? So let's just walk through how you configure the client itself. So the first thing is we need that Pulsar URL, right? This is what we saw when we created the cluster and we saw that particular endpoint. Now, if you're not sure what it is, we can go back to that cluster and you can see it, right here. Hey, this is the endpoint, right? So you can copy it here. I already did this, but you can just, replace it just to show you that you can just easily drop it in, and there you have it, right? Now we can connect it with it as well. There's also, if you can't remember this, there's also information right here about on this thing of how to connect to the cluster using, both the command line and the clients. And so what we're walking through right here is also sort of documented here. I'm using the Java client using OAuth 2, and it shows you the steps that are required here as well. So if you forget these steps, you want to go back and have a quick reference point, it's right here in the UI as well. Oops. So that we've gone ahead and done that. And then we have to basically specify the credentials URL, which is where that JSON file I downloaded and stored here locally is located. The issuer URL of this credential, which is the StreamNative Cloud, and then the audience, which relates to the organization and the cluster to which we're going to have authorization to, right? So once you provide those things to the Pulsar client builder, which is all that's required here. So again, we've done a OAuth 2 credential builder, pass those 3 parameters along with the URL. This is sufficient to create a connection. Now let's switch over to the producer code, which again uses that Pulsar client factory to create that client we just saw. And then it's going to create just simple strings based on that. And we're going to write to this new topic, but it is no longer called this. What did I call it again? Let's go back to topics and see. Hello. Okay, so I'm going to change it to be persistent webinar trial run. Hello. Hope this works. Let's go ahead and run this and pray that the demo gods are feeling good today and don't want to cause any chaos. I apologize for the smaller font size on some of these things. Hopefully they show up a little bit better, and I think the slides will also be available for this as well. I can increase the font size on this UI a little bit. So there, boom, we're sending a bunch of messages over to that topic. And I'm just sending them as fast as I can. I think, yeah, the font size was very bad for some of these things. So hopefully this starts to show some of this information as well. So hopefully it updates in real time. Should start showing a producer on this as well. Look at some of the messages in here. Let's go ahead and get a consumer running. So we've written about 1,800 messages. Let's go over and use the same IDE to write a consumer, so we can both publish and consume messages using the exact same connector. So we'll go ahead and see here. Create a new one on here and hopefully run this guy. So we will stop the producer. Let's see if we have the other one. Split. I guess it only allows you to do one at a time. So we'll run the consumer now. And we should start consuming 3,700 messages or so. Very quickly. Apologize for this, take a little bit longer. But again, you can see we're using the same topic name. We're going to specify we're going to start at the very, this is the latest. We should have done the first. That's why, so there's no data there. Earliest, we'll go ahead and change this. Stop it because I don't have an active producer, so it's not going to find any messages because it's only looking for the most recent and not historical data. So I've changed it now to start at the very beginning, restarted the process, and now we should start getting some data. Okie dokie. Here in a minute. We'll switch back really quick to see if this updated some of the statistics on this now. These things are starting to run. Get back over to the consumer. Come on. Well, of course, it's going to do something silly like this. I've messed the demo. I've irritated the demo gods, of course. We will come back to this shortly. So let me switch back to the slide deck and walk through a little bit of what we wanted to cover as far as the monitoring itself. Get right here. Well, I've actually gone into the application development phase a little bit on this. Kind of jumped ahead and review what we've done on this. Let me switch back. I'll wait for this guy to return. Come on. Close this guy for a second. View. So we have, oops. Sort of cover what we did here in the previous slides, just to recap. So we did the application developer. So we again covered how to get the connection details, how to configure your Pulsar clients to work with StreamNative Cloud, and then get the security credentials, which we showed, right? So again, downloaded the key file for OAuth that's available there from that service accounts screen. Or if you want to use the JWT token, you just click on that tab at the top, and there's a similar download button, and you use a different client library or different builder, credential builder within the Pulsar code to build a JWT token instead. And so this is where we are with the create the producer and the consumer, and are trying to send messages between the two. And I'm trying to get into the application monitoring phase, right? So now we can see that StreamNative Cloud gives you some visibility in how the data is moving, how it's being processed through the system. And we can look at some instance level usage stats, some tenant level namespace, and different various levels as that. So let's go ahead and focus on that a little bit, come back to the screen. Hopefully see if we go back to the instance level. Stats here. Go ahead and kill this guy. And start reproducing some messages just to get some load again. Start sending some messages back through. Let that start here in the background just to get some load. be able to go over to and look at some instance level details here, right? So we go to the organizational screen, as you just saw me go, switch your organization. You get an overview of your cluster. So this is your instance, and this is the number of tenants, namespaces, and topics, active producers and subscriptions, and your in and out throughput will be displayed on this screen right here. And that's your very high level. So the very quick level, you want to look in, see what's going on in my entire cluster. You can go to that level. Then you can drill in and look at a tenant level as well and say, okay, I want to see the in and out rate and throughput on this tenant as well. You can drill in to see some additional information on that. Go to the namespaces, drill down further and see input, output, throughput at a namespace level. And you can continue to drill down to a topic level as well to see, the producers, subscriptions, in rate, out rate, consumptions as well, and your storage size will all be updated. Now, of course, the demo gods had to not be with me today and be updating this as accurately as I would. I tested this earlier and we were able to see some data. Maybe we're just not sending enough load with this very light workspace to update these credentials in real time. But that will update this information, will be updated as you start loading that data as well. So I'm not sure why it's not showing this information. But we will go ahead and we will not be deterred by this. Trust me that this information will be updated. It's just bad luck at the demo. So lastly, let's move over to what's available switch back to the slide deck really quick. And cover the next section, which we're going to talk about SQL. Next thing we're going to do about that. So presenter view. So let's talk about querying real-time streaming data with SQL. This is again, it's a preview, a feature. I'm going to show you how to StreamNative Cloud allows you to query that streaming data source using standard SQL syntax. So the first thing you need to do is, again, if you created a cluster for the first time, we walked through the previous slides. The beginning was to create just a Pulsar cluster. But to support SQL, you also need underneath the covers a Flink cluster as well. And so first thing you need to do that is once you go to navigate to your instance, there'll be a Flink clusters button underneath service accounts. You click on that, and since there aren't any existing clusters, you'll be presented with this option to create a Flink cluster. You go ahead and say yes. Let's go ahead and do that. You'll be taken to this screen, which is very similar to what you saw with the Pulsar cluster, around where you can specify the cluster name, the region you want it to run in, the different node types you want it to support, and it reflects your cost based on which options you choose. You can also, at this point, specify the number of nodes you want to run. So you can do a lot of queries. You can increase that, 3 or 4 or 5. If you need more than a certain, whatever the limit is in the UI, you can request some information. And once you're done, you hit confirm, and it goes through that same process of provisioning a Flink cluster. So you'll see a screen that looks something like this. Again, very similar. It's spinning up the cloud infrastructure. Again, it's deploying the Flink software along with the StreamNative Flink connector as well. So all that information will be there automatically for you. Once it finishes, after that 5 to 10 minute process is done, you'll be taken to a summary screen like this, and you can review all your settings. And it gives you also the SQL gateway URL, so you can connect to the cluster using a traditional SQL gateway protocol, the Flink protocol to connect and query the data as well on that. But you also, once this is up and available, you can also, as we'll do in the hands-on exercise, you can click on the SQL button there on the StreamNative Cloud, and it gives you this interactive dialogue where you can start writing queries and getting the data in real time. And it walks through that process, giving you the different, namespaces. You have to select as we'll see, a topic, or I'm sorry, a cluster first, and then some namespaces and topics, and it shows you all the different topics are mapped to tables. They're logically tables inside of Flink SQL, and you can use that information to run the queries. So let's go ahead and do this hands-on exercise. I've been generating some artificial load, and hopefully let's run some queries and hope that part of the exercise is at least working for us. So let's go back here. I should already have a cluster. There we go. So we'll go ahead and my Flink cluster that I created. will be available, and my cluster is the catalog. As you can see, I have this webinar database here as well. So we have the hello, and let's see, I'm going to go ahead and steal a query I have really quick from this. 1 second. I had it ready. Do this. Execute this query. There we go. If I can copy correctly. And this will be a continuous query. So as long as it's running, it's going to start producing the data. So again, I'm producing a ton of messages in. We're still producing the messages, right? 20,000 or so in now. This should start returning this information, right? So I'm just, messages are just the default values. Just keep going. It's a continuous query. And we can see we're getting the results. So again, I'm just publishing incremental numbers. There's another result set, and it's continuously just updating this information as well. And then another table will come along. The third table is available. You can see it continually updates that. You can go back and forth, see that information just to show you that we're able to query this information. And then whenever we're done processing this, so there's a fourth result set came in, you just go ahead and hit stop, and you'd be completely, we'll stop that execution, that query as well. So let's go ahead and finally stop hammering my topic as well on that. Close this again, go back to the slide. 1 second. So we're able to generate some artificial load and run some queries on that, see that it's working. So lastly, let's talk a little bit about, Kafka on Pulsar preview. So StreamNative Cloud allows you, once you have Kafka on Pulsar protocol, Pulsar has what's called this pluggable protocol framework that allows you to plug in different binary messaging protocols. So typically, every messaging platform sort of uses its own binary messaging protocol to send data back and forth, or there's a standards like AMQP, MQTT. Kafka has its own messaging protocol, which we've created a plugin connector that you can use inside of StreamNative Cloud. And what this does is allows you to use existing Kafka applications without any code changes. So if you've invested a lot of time and money and infrastructure and development costs into writing applications for Kafka and you want to switch over to Pulsar, this makes it seamless from an application perspective, right? So it's coming very soon. This is in preview. It's going to be available in early Q1. If you want an early beta, please reach out to us. We can make it available to you. But again, it allows you to seamlessly integrate with Pulsar, with Kafka applications and tools, making Pulsar even better choice for your organization's streaming use case, because you can leverage existing application investments that you've made in writing applications based on Kafka. You can now just completely port them over and run them on StreamNative Cloud. So let's look at, finally, let's wrap up with some upcoming, new and upcoming features for StreamNative Cloud. First one, we've already announced this, that it's available in the AWS Marketplace. So you can use AWS directly to purchase the StreamNative Cloud experience, but have unified billing on your AWS account and get all the benefits of pricing and features that you have from your AWS representative. So if you're a big AWS consumer, you can subscribe to us, use it there, and then maybe get a discount or some other additional advantages by purchasing it there. So, one-click availability of that StreamNative Cloud platform. Everything you saw there, you can do directly inside AWS. We've also added support for, single sign-on support, integrated with most major identity providers to allow for seamless login experience. So again, like you said, I showed you OAuth in this example. We're supporting Okta, single sign-in with Google, and then the Azure ID experience as well is all going to be available in late Q4 of this year, early Q1 of next year, as an extra feature. So it's something that you need. You want to support these particular identity providers. That's something we provide support for natively out of the box. So you don't have to create a StreamNative Cloud account. You can just log in with your existing credentials and manage it externally from your organization to revoke and grant privileges and access to the system. Coming up is we're going to have some UI refinements as well. So we're going to continue to see upgrades and user experience, Overall, we can look forward to simplified cluster provisioning and onboarding, refined navigation for tenants and namespaces, and improved policy and access management. Interface, so you can enter that and do it more intuitively rather than just using the different user interface that we have today. We're also going to continue to expand, integrated metrics, have more metrics showed than what we just saw. Hopefully, trust me, they actually do work despite what you saw in this demo. And we'll have additional metrics beyond just, a global throughput and number of producers. We're going to have additional metrics and dashboards available to you. So as the product matures, you have more visibility into what's going on inside each individual topic or namespace, either, rolled up at a very high level across the entire tenant, or drilling down into a namespace or topic, based on how granular you want to see this information, right? So we're going to have also self-service integrations, so you can export your metrics to things like Datadog and New Relic, these other application performance monitoring tools that allow you to sort of have visibility across your organization if you want to have alerting and things of that nature built in, have it exposed so you can leverage these existing tools to give you more granular control over your application. We also have that role coming out in the next 2 to 3 months. And sort of the roadmap for 2022, we're going to continue to make improvements in the platform, and which will spill over into also into the cloud as well. Enterprise role-based authentication. We're going to have Delta Lake offloading, so if people are using Spark and Databricks for Delta Lake, that's something we're going to continue to have built in natively to the StreamNative Cloud platform. We're going to have fine-grained permissions for users in StreamNative Cloud Console coming up in Q1. So more granular control than just consume. We can have additional policies around that. We're going to have full support for functions and connectors in late Q1, early Q2. Right now, so it takes a lot of work to have those natively deployed right now. Use Pulsar functions inside the cloud framework. We're going to be focusing on that. Also, we're going to be rolling out Flink. SQL is now currently GA. We're going to make it, support with longer running queries in the second half of 2022. And then we're also going to provide StreamNative Cloud Serverless, a fully elastic Pulsar as a service that seamlessly grows with you. So you no longer have to dynamically go back and scale up the number of instances. You can say, I want, Pulsar serverless to be, dynamically to react to my loads. If you have peak loads, you don't have, performance bottlenecks. It'll just dynamically scale up and down because it's based on Kubernetes. We can, do horizontal scaling and also scaling up and down as well. So you can don't have to worry about provisioning your cluster, over provisioning, under provisioning sort of things. It just dynamically adapts to that. And that'll be available in Q2 as a beta and available out in general in the second half. So lastly, just want to wrap up a little bit about, there's also on-demand Pulsar training. I kind of showed you that in the demo, that web interface there, that ID is part of that self-serve training. So there's on-demand training. You can go through a fundamentals class at your own pace. And at the end, all the coding exercises are based on that user interface. It's available in multiple different languages. What I showed was Java. We also have a Python class available, Go, C#, and also C++ as well. Or the current self-paced training courses are out there. You can log in at any time, do it yourself, do some more interaction with the clusters and play around with a little bit, learn the API a little bit better, become more familiar with the coding, with the clients as well. Also, we're hiring lots of different positions available. If you want to come work for me or work for the engineers who are developing a Pulsar, all these different, these are some of the highlighted ones of our career, but there's several careers also available. Feel free to visit StreamNative.io careers. If you find something you like, go ahead and apply. We're always looking to add new talent, smart new people for sure. Looks like we have a question. So will there be support for streaming change data, capture data from tools such as Debezium and Pulsar anytime soon? Yes, so there is currently, I'm gonna go back 1 second. And so there's currently a Debezium connector available, and that's going to be covered right here it's covered in the connectors, which is late Q1, early Q2. And so that one's going to be available, and then support integration with Knative anytime soon. So that That I'll have to get back with you on that. If that doesn't, if Kafka-on-Pulsar does not support that, which I'm not aware of if that fully supports it or not, I'll have to take that as a follow-up on that one. So let's go ahead and Karen, if we could record that one and take it as an action item for me to follow up.
Yep, absolutely.
I don't want to give you false information, but to the first question around CDC change data capture, that will be included once connector support is added in late Q1, early Q2. Great question. Okay, and then mentioned about hiring. If you want to come work for us, again, visit that career page. There's lots of opportunities in the U.S. as well as Europe and Asia. We're a global company, 100% remote. So don't worry about where you are. If you think you're a great fit for us, come and reach out. We'd love to talk to you. Finally, let's keep in touch. Follow me on Twitter, my LinkedIn, GitHub code. I have all kinds of good stuff there and share the community all the time. Stay in touch with me. I'm constantly running my mouth, so you find me anywhere, any forum all the time. That's not going to be a problem. Karen will tell you that. And last but not least, I'm going to wrap up with we had some questions. Any other questions show up in the chat?
I think there's one more in the standard chat also.
Okay, is there source and sync connectors, e.g. DynamoDB, etc.? Yes, so if you go to StreamNative Connector Hub, there's a list of supported connectors, and there's also some open source connectors. So let me do my best to get out of here really quick and try. We'll freestyle it on the demo here. Stream Connector Hub. This is a list. This is our entire ecosystem of all the supported tools and connectors. So you can break it down by source and syncs. And these are also specify who provides it, right? So StreamNative has some active MQ specific ones, and then there's open source ones for Aerospike, Cassandra, Debezium is one we mentioned earlier around the change data capture. So those are all completely open source, and then they'll be supported in StreamNative Cloud, Q1, Q2 of next year. All these different ones: Elasticsearch, Files, Flume, HDFS, InfluxDB, Kafka, AWS Lambdas, RabbitMQ. All these different ones are available here. You can check them out all the time. We break them down, by sources, syncs, also offloaders. So we support tiered storage. Also supports tiered storage. We have different offloaders for different systems of your choice. Protocol handlers, as I mentioned, we have a pluggable protocol support. And AMQP is sort of the one that all the RabbitMQ uses. Legacy messaging systems use these sort of things. So if you have existing applications that run, like on RabbitMQ, and you want to switch over to Pulsar, you put in the AMQP protocol handler and just point them at that, and it works, seamlessly. MQTT for use in the IoT use space. If you have smaller edge computing devices and that speak MQTT, we support that as well. I'm doing a presentation on that at upcoming Developer Days Texas, and then also Pulsar Summit Asia. We've talked more about that in detail. So if you can't attend either of those, check in the future. We can have some content on that. Data processing. So again, the Flink connector and Spark connectors both are supported. So if you have those messaging systems, you want to do streaming analytics, those are available as well. And then different monitoring, open tracing, and all these different, syncs for storing the logs and logging and processing of that nature. So yeah, those are the different features that are available. Yeah, great question. Any other questions? We'll switch back one more time.
I'm not seeing any showing up. Please feel free, everyone, if you've got anything else, to put it either in the open chat or in the Q&A.
We got about 3 minutes left. All right, I'll thank everyone for coming.
Yeah.
Get back over to Karen.
Thanks, David. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. A big thanks to David for sharing all of his expertise, particularly his bravery in launching a live demo on a live webinar. I know we've all been there. As promised, we are going to be sending an email with the on-demand content from today, as well as any links and the slide deck as well that we were presenting throughout this presentation. Also, for all live attendees, we're happy to offer that $200 StreamNative Cloud credit to get you started. Keep a lookout for that email for details on how to access that. Also, if you enjoyed today's session and you're curious to learn more about Pulsar, David is a very familiar face for us around here. He's actually going to be the instructor for our upcoming live Apache Pulsar developers course that's coming up, I believe, next week. That's actually live training that's designed for anyone who needs to interact with Pulsar clusters, either as a data source or as a data destination. Part of the primary part of that course is learning how to develop applications using Pulsar directly. And that training actually starts up next week. Space is filling up very quickly, so I'll include the link in the follow-up email for everyone as well. And David touched briefly on the newest training offer that we have, but I'd also like to personally invite everyone to check out the on-demand Pulsar training that's available from StreamNative Academy. This is Pulsar training that you can do when it's convenient, comfortable for you. It includes the full videos, demos, all the hands-on labs. The idea is to really immerse you in the material with the goal of giving you everything that you need to become a Pulsar expert, all on your own schedule too. Plus, we've mentioned a couple of other live events that are coming up. The Pulsar Summit Asia is happening at the end of this month. You can check that out on the link that I'll provide out at the StreamNative website as well. So if you have any questions, if you're interested in learning more about StreamNative Cloud or how we can help with your business, please don't hesitate to reach out and contact us. With that said, David, everyone for attending, thank you so much, and we'll see you all again very soon.
Yep, I'm answering one more question.
Oh, yeah.
So asked about Kafka Streams Access and if we have something similar in Pulsar. The short answer is the Pulsar community talked about having its own stream processing framework, but decided sort of against it and instead to focus our efforts on integration, make sure our integration with the more popular frameworks out there, including Flink and Spark, was much more tighter. We felt that they would be better innovators in that space. We're going to stick to our strength, which is messaging, enterprise messaging, guaranteed messaging, and then make sure that we integrate with those popular platforms and let people focus in that area. And then the second follow-up question to that was, can you use the use of Kafka for microservices using K-streams? Is there something similar in Pulsar? I would definitely direct you to. We did a 3-part webinar series on microservices using Apache Pulsar, and it all uses a serverless framework that comes with Pulsar called Pulsar Functions that allows you to deploy code similar to what's AWS Lambdas, where you just supply a single process definition. You actually wrap that up in a jar file or an R file, and you submit that up, and then it takes care of all the plumbing of receiving messages and then publishing, broadcasting messaging out. And so you can focus on just the processing itself. So it's a very good framework for doing event-based microservices development. That coupled with some schemas allows you to very easily do microservices development on top of Pulsar. So that's a similar analogy to Kafka streams. Yeah. And thank you for those questions, Karen. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there's some great ones in there. Also, the Building Microservices with Apache Pulsar webinar series is all available on our on-demand content too. So take a look to access that. It's been a really popular download that we've got. So I think that's it for questions that I'm seeing on here. Yeah, with that said, everyone, thank you so much. We're a minute over. Appreciate everyone coming. And David, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.